entrepreneur families, we're loop openers. And so surrounding ourselves in our business, but also in our home with loop closers that can help us to move really quickly and do cool things in the world. And there are support staff. And so the world has gone so virtual now, and you can have VAs in other countries, but what you don't have is like, if you're sick, that VA is not going to deliver a casserole to your door. We're missing that community right here in our own neighborhood, in our own house. And so while we might not have the built-in village of support that we need from our neighbors or our family living close by, we can build our own village of support.
Welcome to Empowered Homefront, where we talk about health, wealth, and relationships. And let's not forget about the most important one, my friend, and that is faith. And today I've got a special guest, Miss Brenda. She's coming on, and she is known as the Kickass Modern Mom. So Brenda, let's open up with that, because that is a name that is unforgettable, to say the least.
Thanks. I'm so glad to be here, Eric. This is amazing.
Yeah, so tell me,
Yeah.
Kick-Ass Modern Mom, like what does that mean to you? Like, there's got to be a good story behind that.
You know, to what it means to me, and I think what it means to a lot of people who hear it, is that you're really just paving the way in your own parenting journey. And that can mean that you're borrowing from things that you know have worked in the past, maybe even generations past, but then also just doing things that work for you now and what you see as the future of the family experience and the parenting experience and like the things we want for our kids and how we can make that possible for them. And so really it's just like not just a modern mom, but a kick-ass modern mom, because you're really just being almost like a rebellious spirit in how you're paving the way for future generations. And so that's what it means for me. I know that's what a lot of people identify with. Also, they're like, we just feel empowered to kind of rebel against things with this movement. And I mean, how it started was I was really struggling in my motherhood journey, and I had little babies, and I was like trying to connect with other moms and reaching out like, okay, I know you have a kid that's a few years older, like what I have this question, and like what's this thing I can do? I'm in this struggle phase. And so I was just independently reaching out to different moms depending on what my situation was, like, okay, like how do I deal with the bedtime and my kid keeps getting out of bed? Okay, wait, now how do I deal with this thing with my husband? Okay, now how do I deal with whatever it is? And so I'd keep reaching out to people individually, and I started just feeling like, man, it'd be really nice if everybody was like in the same place that we could be having these conversations, because the question I'm asking, then like I turn around and share with somebody. And so I created a Facebook community that was just called Kick-Ass Modern Moms, just for all these people that I knew, all these moms, and I was
Yeah.
having individual conversations with them. And it was like almost like those TMI conversations that only moms can have with each other. But I was like, I want to make a place where everybody can have TMI conversations with other moms that they don't even know, but they
Yeah.
can learn from and they can share with. And so I created this place for that. And it was really just a mom's group, the mom's group I needed for myself, that I created and brought all these other moms together. And then over the years, it's really morphed into a lot of entrepreneurship, because a lot of us moms now, as we've, like we feel callings on our heart to do certain things, and we've all launched businesses, or the ones who don't launch businesses, but they want to support the ones who launch businesses. And they, it's just like this really cool unified movement. And so it really just started from me. I just needed people to talk to give me advice. So I started this group of a bunch of moms, and it was like I could go to the zoo and have my play dates, but I knew there was other women that didn't live in the same place as me that could be helping me in my journey, besides just doing little play date meetups. And so that's how it started, was bringing people together in community so we could share this kind of information, the stuff that there's no parenting books about. Like nobody talks about some of this stuff. And I felt like, all right, I want to talk about this stuff. I'm that kind of very transparent person.
Yeah.
I always have been. And so it was easy for people to feel comfortable talking about stuff around me. So I wanted to bring them together so they could have those conversations with each other also.
That is awesome. I knew that we was aligned like when we first started talking to each other, but like after hearing that story, we're literally trying to do the exact same thing. Like it's crazy. I wish Lori was here, my wife, because maybe we're gonna have to like bring that back and let you and her like hash it out, because I'm sure y'all can really talk about some husband stuff. but yeah. So what I heard was, and the way we explain it is like taboo subjects, right? We live in a
Yes.
day and age where everybody's offended over everything. And because of that, we either bottle up everything that's going on in our life, or we like have a very small niche that we communicate with, and even then you're still stepping on eggshells because it's not the
Yeah.
norm, right? And it sounds
Yeah.
like you're creating, or you already have created, like a community where, hey, let's talk about those taboo things.
Yeah, it started just with this Facebook community, and then every time I would meet other moms, sometimes it was, like, on travels, like,
Yeah.
my we went on, like, a camper trip, and we met these other families in the campsite, and I was like, "Oh, you need to be in my Facebook community," and so, it's just, like, almost like the like, when you're a kid and you go to summer camp and you keep in touch with each other, and so every I would just keep collecting all these
Yeah.
relationships as I would go places, and, I go to Funnel Hacking Live, and I go to all these conferences, and I, like, bring the moms together in this place, and so it was for a while just there, and then now I'm like, okay, how can I help more people than just who's in this little Facebook community, this growing Facebook community? But that's where now it's like I have my own podcast, and I have all my content on social media, and just really getting out and trying to help people in a bigger way and through my coaching and the stuff that I do. So yeah, I
A little bit
absolutely love
about that.
taboo subjects.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about your entrepreneur endeavor. Like, have you always been a businesswoman? Like, I don't even know what it is you do.
Yeah, let me tell you. So, my thing that I absolutely love is helping people with household outsourcing and family systems. One of my favorite ways to help people with that is to find them a hero house manager, I call it. And so it's like if the mom could clone herself and you bring in a person who can help with laundry and dishes and like finishing all the projects that you start and then they don't ever get finished. And so it's really like bringing in a loop closer, right? Like as entrepreneur families, we're loop openers. And so surrounding ourselves in our business, but also in our home with loop closers that can help us to move really quickly and do cool things in the world. And there are support staff. And so the world has gone so virtual now, and you can have VAs in other countries. But what you don't have is like, if you're sick, that VA is not going to deliver a casserole to your door, And so you're missing, even though we're so much more connected in these other ways, we're missing that community right here in our own neighborhood, in our own house. And so while we might not have the built-in village of support that we need from our neighbors or our family living close by, we can build our own village of support. And we can do that with people who start out as what might feel like strangers, but very quickly turn into our family members. We see them as family, they see us as family, like we work together, and it's just really fun and rewarding. And they get to share their really special skills with us. Like while I'm talking to you right now, my personal chef is over here in the kitchen. She's listening to me talk, and then I'm hearing
Yeah.
her like cooking food. And I'm pretty soon I'm going to start smelling amazing smells. And so having people like this in our environment who can support us in this way, and it's like I absolutely love what she makes for my family. It's cooked with so much love, and you taste the love. And my kids get to try foods that they otherwise wouldn't be getting to try. And sometimes they like them and sometimes they don't. But that's something that I don't have the energy to give to that. Even if I like cooking, I don't have the time to always do it at the level I want to. So I can let other people help me in that way and bring them in, and they become part of my village. And we love her. She's like our family. And so like really just getting to see how other families can also do that. And so I help other families to find those types of people to bring into their households to support them in that way also. And so whether they need a house manager or they need like a really cool, like amazing nanny or a
Yeah.
personal chef or whatever those roles are that they need help with, that's where I come in. I kind of give them all the tools they need to find those like super amazing fit people that are like good culture fit.
This is amazing. Yeah, it's we're gonna have to like have a talk after this and talk about like the next steps. I want to do some cool stuff with you. I got some ideas already, because reason I say that is we're actually battling this right now where like, I'm a real estate investor, and then we created the thing called the Deal Boss Project. But in there, what it is a challenge, and it's a 4-step process. The very end of that process we call Journey to Freedom. And Journey to Freedom is everything that you just talked about. It's where you hit this point in your world where you are making enough income to start buying back your time, right?
Yeah.
And now it's time to start hiring a chef, hiring a cleaner, hiring, washing, don't wash your own cars anymore, right? Don't mow your own yards anymore, right? Because now you earn that money, and that money is working for you, right? It's like a phase of life that everybody hits. So tell me a
Mhm.
little bit about that. Like what does your clientele look like?
I love serving entrepreneur families, and sometimes this is like the entrepreneur family that's only had a babysitter or a cleaning person before, but they really just need a little bit more hands-on type of service, and this is where I'm like, get a hero house manager, that's what I call it. It's
I
like the
love that
person
name.
who's like it's like a the wife of the wife, you know? And
Yeah.
so it's like your household bestie that, is your wingman, and you can just like every time you're like, "Oh, wait, and, we're having people over this weekend, so, I forgot that this needs to happen," and then they go do it. And then, "Oh, wait,
Yeah.
and this other thing," right? It's like the, "Oh, wait," things that keep coming to your mind that you can just fire them off to people, and so it's almost like having a personal assistant meets a nanny, meets a dog walker, meets, a project manager that does organization and all these kind of things in your house. So it's like a really multifaceted person that can come in, and then they start to really just foresee what you're going to need, and they just start noticing like, oh, when things pile up in this corner, that's I need to go and like unpile them and put them where they belong, or like figure out what this project is that got started and finish it and stuff like that. So they proactively problem solve for you in your household. And it is absolutely like I have my business Bibles, I call them back here, but I have Dan Martell's Buy Back Your Time and Benjamin Hardy's Who Not How. My
Yeah.
favorite books. I send those to my clients. And while Dan Martell talks a lot about buying back your time within your business, and he does a lot of frameworks in his book around, okay, look at these quadrants. What things do you enjoy doing? What things do you not enjoy doing? And this is now what you need to hand off, and what type of a person you need to get in order to do that. I look at these books through the lens of the household. And so you asked a little earlier ago, like I don't even think I answered it, was like my history with entrepreneurship. My husband has been the entrepreneur for like over 2 decades now. And so we started dating when we were 20 years old. And so from when he was building his business, I was a part of this process. And so while I was working for someone else, I had my corporate job, I worked in finance. He's been building his business all along. And then once I had my firstborn, who's now 12, I decided very quickly that it wasn't really that fun to work to drop her off at daycare at 5:30 in the morning so that I could be at my job for opening bell with the stock market. And we're in Arizona, so I would work New York Stock Exchange hours from Arizona. And so it was just a crazy schedule. And then my husband was like networking and doing things in the evening. So we would just never see each other. So I was like, okay, I don't want to exist this way anymore. So I left my corporate job to stay home to be a stay-at-home mom. Well, then that like quickly turns into me being the like behind the scenes HR person slash personal assistant slash every role for his business, as this like invisible person just kind of like doing things so that he could move faster in his business. And so over the years now, he's now has 3 different companies. I do still help with some of his stuff also, but we've just figured out a lot of ways to be really efficient with both his business and our household, so that when he's not working on business, we can go and do fun stuff together as a family. So we're
So
major big adventurers. And so we're like, how can we not do any of the stuff that we don't want to do so we can go do all the fun stuff? And that's what it's all
yes.
come from.
Okay, so with women, y'all are like man's gift to earth, right? Like when God created women, oh my goodness, like he made y'all tougher than anything that we can imagine as far as men. And like we believe, right? I'm speaking from my own views here, but when it comes to man and a wife household, there are clear roles that each of us plays when it comes to raising kids, when it comes to filling the needs of others, meaning like each other. And I'm curious, like with you and your husband, he's launching his business. Me and Lori's been through it, and we're still going through it every day. It never ends, right? You just get
Mhm.
better. But in the beginning, it took two. And it probably still always will take two. However, you're incorporating this hero's house manager, and now you're like, hey, I get to buy back some of Brenda's time now. Right. And now
Yeah.
you start to like level up in life a little bit and you're like, I can breathe. Like I can vision all that. But like I would love to dive into your stories a little bit about what it took, right, to start your husband's business and then how that grew into your own business. Like
Mhm.
open up that timeline a little bit.
Yeah, so he started back then it was just web design, and it was back
Okay.
when a lot of businesses didn't have websites yet, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
early 2000s, the internet was so much newer. There was like There was not social media. I don't even there wasn't even Google yet. Like, he was making websites for people before there was Google. And so
WordPress.
he yeah. And so it was, like, back when it was all these, like, weird, whatever, nerdy speak things that he can tell you about.
Yeah,
And so he was for then, he's trying to sell something to people that they didn't even know they needed. They didn't even know they needed to be online back then, right? Like, a dentist doesn't understand why they should even have a website.
they
They're
still
like that's true, they still don't.
don't.
Um, but now everybody has a website and they usually hate it, and then they are like, "Well, now I need to be on social media, and now I need TikTok and all these things," right? So,
Yeah.
he started his agency as just a web design firm that then, as things progressed, turned into a full-on digital marketing agency that handles all aspects of digital marketing for all these places, a lot of brick and mortar places. And so he used to go to an office and then he was like slowly building his own team. I mean, just so many stories and all of that process.
Yeah,
But now,
let me
yeah,
ask
now
one
it's like,
question. Yeah, let me ask one question and kind of pull out what I'm looking for here because again, women like you there's a saying like behind every great man there's even greater woman, right? And I firmly believe that because like we're driven, let's call it, taboo subjects again. Like men are driven from sex, all right?
mhm,
And women create that urge. Right? If you don't have a good supporting woman who's saying, "Hey man, you got it. Hey, it's tough. Hey, like look at me taking care of myself. Like I still desire you. I still want you." That right there is pouring gas into the
yeah,
man. And then the man goes out and he hunts. But if that's lacking, that man is laying on the couch eating tater chips and he's not driven. So, like, I wanna
yeah.
dive into those pieces of your story, right? Like, so yeah, I mean, because I know it was struggle because it's not easy for anybody, right?
Oh man, yeah.
And it takes
I'm
2.
It does, and it's like at the beginning of entrepreneurship, it's a lot of you just actually don't even see each other. You don't even sometimes have that interaction, and even as you go along in the journey and you keep like I mean, you now with 3 different company he has 3 different companies, I have my company, and so you have to be really intentional with making sure that you're making time for each other
Mhm.
and making sure that you have those check-ins on business, but also check-ins on personal, and then also setting aside time to be together as a family. And so we figured out many years ago that it was essential that we had to do date night on a regular basis. And so this is like where we're like, always have at least one, maybe a couple. I like to have a stable of babysitters who are available to do date night babysitting for us on a regular basis. And
Now,
this
in the
was
beginning,
for a
though, did y'all
while.
have babysitters?
I was one of those rare breeds that started hiring a babysitter with my first kid. I think she was like 4 months old. Got my first when I first had my first college kid babysitter that wasn't a family member or a friend that we knew. So
Okay.
we when we had our firstborn, my in-laws did not live nearby. They lived were Arizona, they were in California. They would come to visit often, but they didn't live here. And then I grew up on a cattle ranch. My dad is still working the cattle ranch. So he's like definitely not going to be able to babysit a little infant because he's
Right.
like out on a horse. And so my sibling, like nobody in our family was able to help us watch our baby. And we had some friends who they had baby fever, but they didn't have a baby themselves. So they would come every now and then, but they were also not parents themselves. So they wanted to go to the bars and do other stuff. And
Yeah.
so we realized really quickly, we're like, okay, we need people to help us because we like his networking events and things that were on the calendar. I'm like, I don't want to stay home all the time. I want to come with you to some of this stuff. You just start asking around for referrals. It's like, wait, there's other people who are already going and doing this stuff and they have kids. So what are they doing? Right? That's like
And y'all
that's like the
had
lesson everywhere, right? Is like if you like you, right? Somebody wants to learn real estate, go find somebody who's doing real estate, learn from them. Somebody who is good at babysitters, go ask them how they're doing babysitters. Like find people who are already doing the thing you want to do and you want to get better at it and go ask them like how are you doing this, who are you using, just shortcut yourself, right?
yeah.
So that's what we did is we found these other families that were already really good at finding babysitters and using babysitters. They're like, here, we know 5 babysitters, take one. We had like a couple babysitters that we would use on a regular basis very early on with our kids. And then I have 3 kids now. One's 12, one's 9, one's 5. And so as each of the other kids was born, I would be like, as soon as I feel ready to get back out to do a networking event or a social event or like going out to dinner with my husband, where I'm like, I pumped enough milk and I'm like feeling rested enough that I want to go eat a real nice steak dinner. So babysitter time, right? And so depending like a month in or 3 weeks in or whatever that was comfortable for me, I would like get right back into enlisting my support as soon as possible. And so for me, I feel like the success of being this partnership in male and female and the husband wife part of the journey of entrepreneurship is like you have to have intentional time to spend together without your kids, and you have to have intentional time to spend together with each of your friend groups, like away from each other. And you really have to have time set aside to like sit down and talk about finances and sit down and talk about business strategy and like sit down and like go over your webinar conversions and stuff like that. Like talk nerdy about the stuff that you need to, so that it doesn't just feel like this thing that you never get a chance to talk about. Like sit and analyze all the aspects of what is successful in the business, or like, okay, what can we tweak? And really like figure out how what each other's strengths are in that. And so we were
Yeah.
actually just doing this morning where my husband's like, okay, I'm like resurrecting this program that I haven't done a webinar for in quite a while, but I recognize that people need it. So he's back to doing these webinars again. But so we're in tweak phase. And so my analytical mind is like, okay, well, are you doing like a self liquidating offer? And are you, like, what are your email sequences? And we're like getting like nerdy speak on it, because I'm the analytical one and he's like the projection one. And so between the two of us, then it's like he can say, well, this is where I want to get with it. And this is what I want my numbers to be. And I'm like, okay, well, where are our numbers at and what can we tweak? And so pulling in each other's strengths in this is how all of this works. And sometimes I think if the man is the entrepreneur, he may not realize that his wife has all these exact strengths. Like my husband's having his team do all these strength assessments. And he's just like, okay, I got a strength in the top right corner, a strength in the top left corner. I'm in the top middle. I got somebody who's kind of over to this right side. He's like, I'm missing the two bottom corners. And then I'm like, I pull up mine. I'm like, oh, I haven't looked at my results yet. Let me see. I'm like the bottom corners, right? And so I'm just like, okay, I'm not on your team, but I kind of am. And so it's like, yeah, like he's like, man, we just need to hire another person. We need to find somebody who has this strength. I don't know where to find them. And then here I am sitting here, like trying to analyze his numbers with him, being like, oh, actually, that is my strength. Maybe
Yeah.
we should use my more and really have me start actually talking to your team a little bit about this stuff instead of it being just like me, you, and then you, your team. Right. And so it's always this like work in progress where we're always trying to like figure out how can we best use each of our strengths, while also just honoring like how unique we are. Like we don't need to see eye to eye on some stuff. Like that's what is beautiful about it, is like I see it from this other lens, which is why I can, help the team in this other way, because it's an area that might be a blind spot for other people. So,
Yeah.
um, is that what you
So
were like? I don't even know if that's
no,
what you were
that was
looking for.
really good. Yeah, that was really good. I want to go back into how can we relate with broke people? Because I know me and Lori, my wife is very much different from you already, Brenda. Like she is not outsourcing. She like it's hard for her to release stuff. And with
Yes.
her, she always feels like if she's not physically doing it, she's not the person doing it, then she's not fulfilling her role. And a lot of moms feel that way. A lot of moms, it will prevent them from becoming an entrepreneur or running their own business or even getting a job because they're like, what's important to me is I want to be there 24/7 with my child. And I know there's a psychology barrier there because like I wouldn't say I wouldn't say like it's so much of a northern or southern or any of those like norms. However, at the same time, like she always had her grandmother there raising her 24/7. And then her grandpa was full-time working. So that's what she knows. And that's how we're molded, right? That's how we're groomed to grow up to be individuals. And then all of a sudden we come together, husband and man. And this is we talk about this a lot in Deal Boss Project, where husband and wife, that's a business, right? Like people don't realize it. Anything where you make money and money goes out, that is a business and you need to treat it as such. And people,
Mhm.
whenever I say that, if people aren't familiar with what I'm talking about, they're like, no, you can't treat your marriage like a business. I'm like, how can I not? Because there's communication involved, there's income
Mhm.
involved, and there's expenses involved. Now, if we break that down, get away from the analytical side of it, I would love to pull some of your knowledge and own this from the people who are living paycheck to paycheck. It's not in their means to hire a babysitter right now, much less a nanny. But there are, and I know you have the answers. Like there are steps that they can start taking where they can
Yeah.
start making more money. And we call that skill stacking, right? Like that's the first thing people need to do is they need a skill stack. That way they're worth more money. And as they're worth more money, they start outsourcing. So let's dive into that a little bit. Like what do you got?
I have like definitely two things that come up. I wrote them down, so I'll remember the second one after I start talking about the first one. But so I will tell you that I hired my first cleaning lady when I was in my 20s in the roommate house. And I would just fill up my car with only half a tank of gas so that I could use the money that would be in the other half a tank to pay my cleaning lady because I saw the value in it.
Mm,
And it was because I was in the roommate house where it's like somebody actually uses a Tupperware, but somebody else just puts saran wrap over the top of a can of beans and calls that storing it. And then it ends up all over the fridge. And I'm like, this is not my responsibility to clean up after you fools. And they're like, not taking responsibility either. So I'm like, let's bring in this third party person. We all split it. And at the time, our cleaning lady was $60 and she would come once a week. So we all put in 20 bucks to pay for, because there's three of us, we would all put in 20 bucks to pay $60 for a cleaning lady so that none of us had to argue over whose spilt beans were all over the shelf in the fridge. She
mm,
would just clean it and it was handled. And the same with like any of the weird other smelly stuff going on in other parts of the house. And so we brought in a third party person because it was like, this problem can be solved. We are all friends here. We want to remain friends. So let's bring in the support that we need so that like this is worth it for us. So 20 bucks, 20 bucks a week. And at the time, I'm like this, you know, I think was I still taking classes or I was just out of college but it's like definitely at a point in my life where I was not making enough money that other people would think I would be able to have a cleaning person. But that's the thing is there's no set spot where all of a sudden you are like, "Oh, I'm here now and now I have a cleaning person." No, you can be a college kid and hire someone to come help you do your laundry in your dorm. You know, like you can outsource at any level. Like my kids can hire other kids at their school if they want to do other stuff that are like, you're good at this, I'm bad at it, I'm going to hire you to do this thing. That's what it comes down to. And when we find people, sometimes it's like trading even, right? And so my husband very early on was like, I need new tires on my car. I will make your website for tires. Stuff like that, right? And so
yeah.
when you see how you have value and they have value and sometimes you can trade value and it doesn't have to be money. And so I know people who will trade whatever their thing is, like entrepreneurs who will trade whatever their thing is for the people who are coming in and supporting them in their household because the people in their household, they see that as way more valuable than whatever the money, like the hourly rate that they would normally be getting. Like that is super more valuable to them to be getting mentored in a certain area, right? Like if you brought in somebody in your household and you're like, you know what, in return, I will mentor you on real estate. That would be
Hmm.
so much more valuable than the hourly rate they're going to get because they're not going to be able to take that, 20 or $25 per hour and turn around and get that type of education anywhere else. And so it's a huge value for them. And for you, it's like you give them a 30-minute chat every week. Like it's no time for you and it doesn't cost you that much, right? And then for them, it's just such a huge valuable thing. And so for families who feel like we can't afford this kind of help, well, you just got to think about it differently, be a little more creative. And so for me, what it forced me to do back then is by spending half of my gas tank on a cleaner, that just meant that I couldn't go out and party as much. So the ripple effect of that is then I end up actually doing stuff that's better for me now that I've outsourced this thing, then I'm making better choices in other parts of my life because I'm like, well, I already spent this money on this. So what now? How can I use this thing better? And so like, okay, I'm not going to go out to the bars as much because I don't have all the gas in my car to be running all around town and gallivanting everywhere. So what else am I going to do with my time? Well, I end up doing more valuable things with my time. And I like go on my self-development journey and all these other things, right? And so it's like the
Mhm.
catalyst. So sometimes for people who feel like I can't afford this, I tell them, I'm like, think of it as when you're a kid and you hear the ice cream truck going by down the street. You do not have a dollar for ice cream, but you so badly want that ice cream. So you go digging around everywhere that you think you might find coins in your house, and you find enough coins. Like you go through couch cushions, you like look in all these little nooks and crannies, and you find the coins so that you can go run outside with your friends and you can all sit together and have an ice cream in the front yard. And you're a kid, right? So
Yeah.
you find ways to buy the thing you value, and I call it couch cushion money, because you're digging through and you find it and you get yourself the ice cream by golly because you value it. And so in our adult life, there are things that we can look at the same way where it's like, okay, you now realize you're not going to be able to do the things in your business or going to be able to do the things with your family or with your wife that you want if you don't buy your time back. So you obviously value your time. So where can you find couch cushion money to be able to buy your time back? And
Yeah.
some of the things, like I love doing a like kind of like a spending audit with the families I work with and being like, how are you already solving this problem in a less efficient way and a actually like less affordable way? And so we think bringing somebody into our house to work for us is going to mean that it's really super expensive. It's going to be like you pay Mr. Belvedere $100,000 a year. But it's actually so much cheaper and much more affordable than people think. And they're probably already budgeting for it, and they're probably trying to solve it in a way that they might actually save money if they hired somebody to do it instead. And so it's like those food boxes, right? Like
Yeah.
I know we did those for a while, and then or like food delivery service or all those kind of things. Well, then it's like my personal chef can come in and she's like actually shopping for the groceries and like helping clean out the leftovers from the week before. And it's like this whole comprehensive process instead of just this box that arrives that I still have to do a lot of steps for. And so maybe for the some of the families that are listening to, maybe those delivery services are actually more expensive than hiring a person. And so maybe they're already solving it in a way that's costing them more money, and maybe it's less healthy food, and maybe it's causing them more stress. And so this is where I like to tell families it's like, yeah, let's look through your couch cushions and let's see like what subscriptions are you paying for? Are you actually watching Hulu and Netflix and ESPN and Disney and every single one of the subscriptions that you have?
All of
Or do you really just gravitate towards one? And if we just kind of eliminated all of those until it's football season and then brought it back in just for that short time, that whole rest of the year, you could be spending ESPN money to solve a problem in your house. And so it's like, let's just divert the funds over here. Or maybe you have a cleaning person who's coming, and by bringing in a house manager, you're not going to need that cleaning person as often. So then maybe instead of having a weekly cleaner, you use that exact same money to pay your house manager that can do a lot of other things besides just cleaning. And then you have your cleaners come in once a month for a deep cleaning. And so you really just divert some of the funds you're already spending to solve these problems. And so you don't have to feel like, oh, once I make a certain amount or once I get to a certain level, then I'll be able to do all this kind of stuff. Like, no, be the roommate that tells your other roommates, we're going to get a cleaning person because I'm not cleaning up your dumb beans anymore.
Oh,
And
this
so
is
you can
so good.
start, you guys just start at such an early level. And I know in business is probably something you talk to people about business a lot is like, get the person before you actually think that you can afford them, because then it like makes you go and create, because you're like, well, I got this VA that I'm paying, so I'm going to like be wiser with my time and go do better things with it. And you end up generating the revenue that you need to cover that person and beyond, because it like just frees you up to be creative and frees you up to go and like have those conversations and do the networking instead of all this little back end piddly stuff that you shouldn't be doing. And so then the second part of the question, that like, you were talking about with your wife and how much of a struggle it can be for moms to really let go of this idea that we tie our worth to the things we do.
Mhm.
And for everybody that's listening, is our worth is not in what we do, it's who we are.
Mhm.
So is the stuff you're doing actually making you more resentful and making you just a sourpuss and making you just like lose your magic? Like if you're the magic person in the house doing all these magical things that nobody even realizes you do, are you losing some of your magic because of doing those things? And if you could hand them off and you could be like, you know what? I'm going to let a college kid do my laundry for me every week. while I go to lunch with my girlfriends, while I go kayaking or paddleboarding or something that fills my cup. And then I come back to my household and I'm fun mom and I'm goddess wife, right? Like I feel myself because I got to
Yes.
go do the things that light me up, that get me back in my feminine state instead of just this like do. I need to create the magic behind the scenes for all these other things because it's easy in a business to be like, okay, I have this checklist of all these things that need to get done. I can ignore these and it'll just make my results suffer, but I'll handle it later. But in a household, there's this checklist of all these things that need to get done. If mom goes on strike and is like, I'm not cooking, I'm not doing the laundry, I'm not doing any of this stuff, like that's not going to fly. Like you can't just ignore some of the checklist and be like, it might suffer a little, but we'll figure it out. Like you can't ignore it. And so while in business, sometimes you can ignore some of the stuff and not end up outsourcing in the house, it's just such a bigger repercussion to not get the support you need in those. And then the person that gets stuck having to always do that list, and then their list grows, right? And so like as business grows and the mom is like doing all these mom jobs, I call them like it's like dirty word, like they're not mom jobs, they're just jobs and
Yeah.
anybody can do them. And so it's like and it doesn't have to be this battle of like husband and wife, like, you need to do more of this and you need like everybody always thinks they're doing more. Okay, what if you just bring in this complete third party person that then it's like, okay, neither of us have to do this anymore. This other person's going to do it for us and we're actually going to go do something fun together. We're going to go get coffee together. Well, somebody else does the whole household's worth of laundry for us. And so we get that time to connect again. And so this is where it's like you don't need to be at any certain level. Like it's so much more affordable than people think to bring in the help you need. And you don't need people for as many hours as you think either. And so we think because it takes us an entire weekend to get caught up on laundry, that it's going to take somebody else a lot of hours. But it doesn't. Like that same cleaning lady that I had the college years, we kept her for the longest time. We had her once we got married and had kids and had our babies. And I remember by the third kid, second kid, that I was just like, man, the laundry is the bane of my existence. I call it the laundry basket graveyards. I was pretty good at like washing it and then most of the time switching it over to the dryer before it got weird smelling that I had to rewash it again. But then after the dryer, it would go in these laundry baskets and it would just sit in laundry baskets and it'd be this laundry basket graveyard until everybody pulls their stuff out of it until it goes about halfway down and then you have to rewash everything again. But it never goes back in drawers or back in closets. It's just like this cycle with this laundry basket graveyard. And I asked my cleaning lady, I was like, can I just have you stay extra time every time you come? She was coming every 2 weeks. I was like, can you just stay a little extra and just put away all this laundry for me? So I like already was washing and drying it and it's all in baskets. And so I would just make sure the day before she came that I ran all those cycles of clothes. So it'd be like, all right, wash, dry, wash, dry, wash, dry. And then it would just be like baskets galore of everybody's clothes, towels, everything. Or maybe I did some of them over the weekend. They're in baskets. And then I add a few more right before she comes. I just have all these baskets. And then all she would do is just fold them and put them away. And
Mm,
it would seriously take her like an hour to an hour and a half. And it would
that
take
is so
me
good.
all of Saturday
So,
to do those exact same baskets. So I paid her for 1 hour a week or 1 hour every 2 weeks of extra time to solve a problem for me that gave me an entire Saturday back. So,
that is
like, I
so
just want
good.
that to sink in for everybody else. It doesn't mean it's just like when we're in our business, you don't go from solopreneur to this whole team of all these people. Like, okay, I'm doing everything by myself and now I hire 10 people. Now I have 10 people on my staff. It doesn't go like that in business and it doesn't go like that in a household. You just layer things on, right? And so you in your business, you go from solopreneur to like, okay, now I'm going to get a VA for 3 hours a week. Okay, now I'm going to have this person that just comes in part time as needed, or a contract, right? A fractional person that they own their own business. They're going to fractionally help you out. The same in our households. So you don't go from like mom does it all herself to all of a sudden this team of all these people everywhere. We now have a team of a bunch of different people that help us, but we didn't start with that. We started with the cleaning lady from when we were in our early 20s who stayed with us forever and ever and ever, who
Mm.
then that cleaning lady, we added on 1 extra hour every 2 weeks to handle the laundry. Then we realized very quickly, I was like, I actually don't even want to wash it or dry it either. So I just want to bring in a separate person that can come and do that. And so we had a girl that would come, depending on the week, she would come between 3 and 5 hours each week. This was one of our early house managers. And so she would come 3 to 5 weeks and she taught yoga. She worked with all these other households. She did all these other odd jobs everywhere. But this was what she did for us is she would come 3 to 5 weeks or 3 to 5 hours per week just to like mostly her biggest task was just handling all the laundry. But what do we know about laundry? While that's going, you can do other stuff. So then she would also do cleaning up the kitchen. She was like amazing cook, so she would do some of the cooking. That was before we had a personal chef. So she did some of the cooking for us. Um, like boiling eggs, stuff like that, like you like requires your time to pay attention to it. Otherwise, they turn into weird gray piles of crumbliness. And she would actually make us boiled eggs because my kids loved boiled eggs in their lunches and for snacks. And so we just needed to keep those refilled all the time. I don't have the time to monitor boiled eggs. She would just come in and make boiled eggs while she's doing laundry and doing dishes and, like cleaning up the kids' rooms and picking up dog poop in the backyard and all these other little tasks in 5 hours a week. It's like the you can layer it on and it doesn't have to be this huge undertaking. And I will say that I absolutely struggled when she would come. I always felt that I needed to be doing something. Like I had bought my time back, so I better do something good with my time. And it took me a really long time to understand that taking a nap was also a good use of my time. So I
Mm.
had the hardest time. Like sometimes I would be so tired. That was when the kids were little. They would, I'd be up in the middle of the night taking care of kids, but I would have the hardest time telling her, I'm going to go take a nap while you do my laundry. That was so hard for me. It was really, really hard. And I think that this is something why it's so important to find a person that's a good culture fit, because I think part of that was because I knew she was also kind of judging me for doing that. And so while she was really helpful in a lot of ways, there was also some judgment she had around the way we live our life and the things we do. Like she just didn't get these big entrepreneur dreams that we had.
Yeah.
And so for us, she was what we needed at the time, but she wasn't the best fit long term because she wasn't aligned with our family values. Also, I grew up on a cattle ranch and I eat a lot of dead animals. I love eating dead animals. I am a carnivore and she was a vegan. And so she did not feel, even though she was an amazing cook, she would make all these amazing vegan Indian recipes, which were delicious. But I'm like, cool. Can you please throw some dead animals in there? I really would like to eat some dead animals with all these amazing spices. And she did not feel comfortable even handling the meats. So this for us was where it was like, okay, we are not aligned on this. Our political views are not aligned. Like, and this became where there became more and more friction than the amount of help we were getting. That then I'm like, okay, we need another one of you that's actually more aligned with what our family's all about. Like, we need to see eye to eye on a lot of these other issues that matter to us besides just laundry. And so that's really like how I develop more of my framework as far as like how important it is to like don't just hire the teenager down the street just because you know them. Because maybe they don't have the same values as you and they're going to judge you while they're in your house. And you don't want that. Because that's not going to free you up to feel like your wife isn't going to feel better about not doing all these jobs if there's some woke college kid in her life that's like judging her constantly. And so this is where I really like realize like, oh no, like this part matters just as much as the help does. And
Yeah.
so that's like one of the biggest pieces of the puzzle that I bring in when I help people find good fit help in their house is like, let's find out what your family values are. What are you guys all about? What are your big goals and dreams? Like what matters to you, your religion, your political views, all these kind of things, so that we make sure that we find somebody that speaks that same language that's going to turn into your family. And so I just feel like it's like when we build teams in our business, we're not just gonna it's like the difference between I feel like the Circle K, they put up the little thing in the window, help wanted, apply within, right? And then somebody comes in and they're like, I have this availability and I'm not a total deadbeat. And they're like, great, you'll do, come to work. Whereas like Google, the company, they're going to have this whole extensive process where they make you jump through all these hoops to even work for them. So if you're not even aligned with all that, you're not going to jump through all those hoops. And so while we don't need to make a bunch of obstacles for people to come and help and support us, we can do a lot of things to filter so that we make sure we're being a Google and finding these people who are very aligned with us, who also are going to want to stick around for a long time and really serve us for a long time. So it's not just going to be like this fleeting thing. And then, okay, like 2 months from now, I got to go back to this process all over again. So just really finding like those really good people that you get to do life together with long term. And so, same stuff in business, right? Like you want to attract those kind of people in your business relationships, and so the same thing in your household. And that's where it's like maybe your mother-in-law doesn't live next door and she can't come over and like be at your house all the time helping with all these kind of things. And that's funny because a lot of people feel like, oh well, if my mother or my mother-in-law, if they live next door and I had a good relationship with them and they were over all the time doing all these things, then that would be amazing. I wish I had that. And so people would feel okay handing it off if it's that person.
Mm,
But for some reason, as soon as it's somebody that's not that person, they don't feel okay with handing it off anymore.
mm,
And that's where I'm trying to change that, where it's like, it's also okay to hand it off to these other people who maybe you're going to like them better than your mother-in-law or better than your own mother, because you don't have to try and like get them to overcome their own limiting beliefs about
mm.
how they raised you while also trying to help you in your own house.
Yes.
And so sometimes you're like, yeah, it's like maybe you already do have family support, but maybe you need to move away from that and just let them be family and not let them be your house managers. And
Mhm.
instead, like somebody else who's an actual house manager, let your mother-in-law just be your mother-in-law and keep them separate. And so for some families, that's what they need. So, anyways, I'll let you go now.
That was a lot of really good stuff. Oh my goodness. I was wanting to interrupt, but I'm like, nope, she's on a roll. Like, my goodness. I could like unbottle all of that. Oh my goodness. There's one thing though, just for the listeners, if you didn't catch it, whenever Brenda first jumped on the show, she talked about how we're always opening loops. And then you just close the loop, right? I don't know if you realize that, but like in that last talk, she closed the loop, right? And I think that's a huge takeaway from this whole like show is understanding laundry, the laundry graveyard. You're opening a loop by washing it, by drying it, even folding it, but it will pile up. And that's an open loop that we all have inside of our households. And it's like, how do you close that? Right. And you gave them an answer, right? To close that loop. And that's amazing. What is your opinion on closing those loops with your kids?
Oh, this is a big question I get asked a lot. I know we're going to run out of time here, but I'm going to be quick and make sure I answer this because I do get asked this a lot is, okay, well, I want to hire help, but I don't want to raise entitled brats. And I say to people is, again, if this was your mother or your mother-in-law coming into the house and she was coming alongside your kids and doing the laundry, but also teaching them how to do the laundry and helping them tidy up their room, but also talking them through it, right? If it was a family member who came and did this on a regular basis, and they're doing it along with our kids, we feel fine with that because we're like, oh, they're getting to learn from their grandma. This is amazing. They get to like, learn how to crochet and how to knit and how to do all these things that grandma does that I don't do. Well, we make the mistake that whenever it's these other people that come into our house, that we somehow think that they are not also going to help teach our kids, like that we're the only people who can teach our kids as the parents. And so there's like, they're at school, they're learning from people. They go to soccer practice, they're learning from their coach. There's all these people who have influence on their life. And so when you bring in a person who's such an aligned, right fit, amazing person, they're such a role model for your kids. And they come alongside them and they can teach them how to organize their closet, how to do their laundry. And the coolest thing is like if you find like a college kid, right? Like my kids are 12, 9, and 5. Our house manager is going to college. So she bridges that space between my age and my kids' age. So she's kind of like that older cousin that comes in and she speaks my language, but she also speaks my kids' language. Like she says the words that they say that I don't even know what they mean, but she also is mature enough as an adult and she's living by herself and making a lot of choices as an adult. And so she bridges this gap of communication between me and my kids that sometimes mom asking it comes across as nagging, but as soon as house manager is like, hey, let's do this together, they want to do it because it's fun with her.
Yeah.
So instead of creating entitled brats, what you do is you create kids who see the importance of collaboration on teams, who understand that their worth is not tied to a bunch of chores that turn into adults that feel like they have to keep doing chores for their worth. Like, don't give your kids an allowance for chores. Like, let them see that contribution in the house is contributing to a team and pay them for value they provide. So doing chores is not value. And this is why, like, moms will feel like our value is tied to these things around the house because we got paid for it when we were kids. Well, stop paying your kids for the things that you don't want them to not be able to let go of as an adult. Because then, like, my kids know if they want to earn money, they can just make something and go sell it to kids at school. They can,
Yep.
like, make stuff and go sell it to the neighbors. They can
Yep.
always create whatever value they need to exchange currency as energy for the stuff that then they want to go and buy. So they
Yep.
know that they can always create their own value and create their own wealth. And that's not because they're having to do chores in a house, but they do know that they do have to contribute. So we have a star chart and they earn technology time for contributing around the house. So for them, it's like, I don't want them staring at screens all the time. I think there's more valuable things to be doing, but I do see the value in them using it sometimes. Well, they value that. So that's their ice cream. So I'm going to
That's
make
amazing.
them see the contribution to the household so they earn their stars and their points to cash in for their ice cream truck stuff, which is their technology time to just be like doing whatever on YouTube. So that's where we use it, where it's like, it's good for kids to learn how to actually do their own laundry. So as adults, if they need to, they can. But it's also good for kids to see the value in outsourcing it so that they turn into adults who can move faster, further by being able to delegate those kind of things away and not feeling bogged down by it. And so their success in their future will actually be exponentially faster if they see the value in delegating. But again, it's like helping them understand how to still do it. So it's like they're not entitled brats. They just see the value in automation and delegation.
Awesome. Yeah, I want to get you out here on time, but that's a great way to end the show. If you want to learn more, you can reach out to Brenda. We're going to have all of her information below. And that's what Empowered Homefront's about, bringing the nuclear family back to the dinner table to talk about values, standards, and principles. And she just mentioned the most important one: whoever you bring into your household, make sure they meet your values. Don't be indoctrinating your children the wrong way because they're indoctrinated whether you want them to be or not. Till next time,
Yeah.
Brenda.
Thanks so much, Eric. This was amazing.
Amazing.